Good evening. It is 10:55 on my clock on the end of the first week of this spring forward crap, and I'm still groggy. Took a nap this afternoon, and I realized I cannot do the fifth movie on this five-movie Catherine Deneuve set. Now, she is iconic. She is the female Gerard Depardieu, but so much more, because I don't see her doing any comedy if possible. There is one madcap comedy in here, but no matter what, no matter what the lady does, I cannot work up any enthusiasm for her character. I do own a couple of her movies. How could you not? She must have made 1,000. So this is a five-movie set I got from the library to keep my French practice up. The first movie was called Manon 70. It's an update of a French novel, and it's actually filmed in 1968. So you've got an awful lot of very, very dated clothes in it. The opening scene is the models getting ready for this fashion show, and I'm just like, wow, cheap fabrics, bizarre cuts, just what is 60s about? I have no clue. So in this, Catherine Deneuve is some woman whose name I forgot. It never matters what her name is. She's some woman, and this guy sees her on a plane, actually sees her waiting to board a plane, and switches his ticket so he gets to sit in the same class as she does. And then when she gets out of the plane and is going into the car with the guy she came with, he comes up and says, "With me, you'll have to take a taxi." So she hops into the taxi, and she goes with this guy who turns out to be a reporter for like France Radio 4, and he starts living beyond his means because of her. And I'm not sure if she has a job or what, but then she meets this American, and I'm always tickled when I see American actors speaking French in French movies. I just enjoy the shit out of that because I can hear that they have a lousy non-French accent the same that I do. So she's living with this reporter, and she meets this guy in a club. Now her brother is kind of like a pimp, and her brother gets this other guy, this American oil man, to put up money for his club. And the oil man thinks that the brother is the lover and the lover is the brother. So when she goes with her lover to the guy's island retreat, he thinks it's the brother, but he seems to somehow also have a kink about being betrayed. So he puts this walkie-talkie he has, and he plants a recording device in the bedroom. And at the end, I just turned it off because her and the reporter end up on some kind of boxcar, and I was just wishing he'd push her off. The woman to me had absolutely no redeeming value. And then the second one which I watched was Le Choc, which had Alain Delon, our favorite from the Samurai, our steely marble, blue-eyed nettoyeur, and he was good. You could tell he wrote this or was involved in the writing because he had like a nude scene in it in the beginning. He was just like, "I'm this nettoyeur and I'm just this hot, tough, cool guy." And there was actually a nude scene where he's like in this shower by himself, but you can sort of see through the pebbled glass. And what happens there is the nettoyeur decides he doesn't want to perform contract killings anymore. So he goes to hide out on a turkey farm, which he's become invested in without his knowledge, because his financial advisor invested some of his ill-gotten gains in a turkey farm. And Catherine Deneuve is the wife of the turkey farmer, so she's clumping around in the muck boots and the giant carty, and her husband is some idiot schlub. So of course she ends up having an affair with Alain Delon, and then somebody else comes and finds out he's hiding there, and they blow people up, and there's lots of shooting, stabbing, a typical French film. And at the end, he regains his money after a series of horrible murders of the people who did him wrong, and they literally run off hand in hand to a helicopter to their destination. And then we had this alleged, I have it down here as a madcap romantic comedy called Le Sauvage. This was from wow, really that late? 1975. Tony Roberts was in it, also speaking French. And what happened here is, for some reason, from as my mother would say in her Polish accent, for some unknown reason, Catherine Deneuve is going to marry this Italian guy, and they're in Venezuela. So there's a lot of Italian, there's Spanish, there's French going on. And so she decides not to marry the guy, goes to this club where somebody's outside driving by, to this club that Tony Roberts owns, steals a Toulouse-Lautrec he just happens to have on his office wall, runs to Yves Montand. To try to sell it. I don't know how she knows him, or if he just happens to be in the hotel she ran off from the Italian guy with. And she hops in his truck, and he lets her off at an airport, and he's going to help her get on a plane back to Paris. But it turns out that instead, through some vile machination of hers, she gets a pilot to drive her to Yves Montand's island, because it turns out that Yves Montand is a French truck farmer on this paradise out off the coast of Venezuela. And he's got the ducks and the chickens, and I'm thinking like, wow, all these European farm animals here. And he's growing tomatoes and all these vegetables, which I don't even know would grow in Venezuela. So he's on this lovely island in this sort of like tropical house thing which he's renting. Turns out in truth, he is a millionaire perfumer who's run off from his business. And his wife knows he's there, and they've been watching him all this time. They're trying to get him back. And through a bunch of crap, which I'm not even going to go into, at the end, they end up taking her, and she marries the Italian guy. This is off screen. She marries the Italian guy, and they divorce. We don't really know what happens. Yves Montand goes to jail because he has reneged on his perfume contracts, comes out of jail, and finally he shaved his beard off, because for most of the movie he's unrecognizable. He's looking all stubbly. He looks like a Jimmy Buffett kind of clone. And then he looks like Yves Montand again, and he finds her off the coast of Mexico fixing up a villa, and they run into each other's arms. But I did not find it madcap. I found the beginning of it very, very irritating. Lots of Catherine Deneuve running around with a suitcase, cars getting smashed up, probably a very expensively staged car chase, this beautiful tropical island, a lovely boat. Oh, she also sinks Yves Montand's boat because she doesn't want to go back to Venezuela. So she's a total bitch. She's a total waste of time, and I don't know why anybody would want her. And then the fourth movie, finally, she doesn't have beautiful hair, because one thing about Catherine Deneuve, she's always got that golden mane of hers. And no matter what she's doing or how immoral she is, I'm always admiring her hair. So in this last one, which was called Hotel des Amériques, which must be I've heard this before, it has to be done by forgot the name of the director. It's an arty film. I remember when it came out, again, from the early 80s. And she is not wearing her usual Catherine Deneuve blonde mane. She's got her hair tied back. It's a little darker. And she's an anesthesiologist. Now, where is she? In Biarritz, of course. She's in this lovely seaside town. She's in Biarritz, and she almost runs this guy over. And the guy looks like a typical French new wave hero. He's skinny, crappy hair, gold hanging out of his mouth, typical cigarette guy. And she gets involved with him, and he's just agonizingly awful. Turns out that she was in love with some person at I think it was her professor, one of her medical professors. And then she met this architect, and she and the architect were going to have this lovely semi-abandoned villa in Biarritz here. It was called the Salamander, which is, that's got all kinds of Greek mythical connotations to it. So she has this house, and she doesn't know whether to sell it or not to sell it. And in the attic of the house is this model, major, lovely city of the future that the architect never completed because he drowned. Of course he drowned. It's Biarritz. Lots of coast. And so the gloomy, I even forgot the fucking guy's name. Gilles. His name was Gilles, of course. So Gilles is agonizing, and he's just a wastrel, a total wastrel. And he's like, you can't forget about this. You can't forget about this city and your former lover's beautiful vision of the future, because that means that love is not permanent. And there's another thing where he like kind of runs off and tries to makes a really bad attempt to drown himself in the waves. And again, he's just an agonized Frenchman. And there's some other subplot about Gilles' friend who may or may not be gay, which I thought was pointless. And the end of this movie is such a typical French movie ending, because unlike the happy endings I saw in two of these, at least in this one, it's left open-ended. Gilles is sitting in the subway, no, he's sitting at the train station, and he's rehearsing in his mind what he's going to say to her to try to get back together. And I thoroughly hope they didn't get back together. Anyway, I had too much. I had a French overdose, so I've had Deneuve of this. I'm not even going to bother with the fifth film. Each film was very interesting in that it showcased what was going on at the time from the 60s French fast into this madcap comedy, which actually gave me respect for Tony Roberts, because his French was not bad. And Yves Montand, this was in 75, so Yves Montand was like nearing, maybe he needed money, I don't know. Do I recommend this? Do I recommend this? I recommend once in a while you watch one of these. If only you watched Manon 70 for the amazingly bad fashion of the 1967-68 era, which I took part in. In fact, my mother made me clothes that look kind of like some of this crap. This has been a very long video. I've been talking very fast, and it's now 11:07. I'll be talking to you soon. French movies, that's what they are.